good afternoon. Welcome back into Mining Stock Daily. We have some corporate commentary for you this afternoon. Happy to be welcomed in by Great Bear Resources CEO, Mr. Chris Taylor. Chris, we've got a couple news releases we need to catch up on. Continued, obviously, nice grades and recoveries from your current drill results. You've expanded the 2021 drill program. A couple things we want to just kind of get your thoughts on here. Let's start off with last week's drill results coming out of the Central LP zone. Give us a rundown here, what you're finding, and really what is meaningful behind that list of results.
Yeah, hey Trevor, great to talk to you. Yeah, the Central LP, it's really just got these exceptional, very continuous, huge panels. I don't mean to sound, very arm wavy on it, but we see kilometers of high-grade gold mineralization, and you see that going right to surface. So we came out with some results this past week where you're ending up with basically an ounce per ton gold over. Sometimes you see that over 15, 20 meters right to the surface. It's pretty incredible stuff. Sometimes half an ounce over similar widths. I mean, just very impressive gold numbers. And that's the core of the LP fault system. So you can see the sort of high grades and the continuous panels of high grade. Anyway, very exciting. And around that, you get these bulk tonnage intervals of gram type material, less than a gram, but it's this wide halo of disseminated gold around those high grade panels. So we put that out on Thursday of last week, and definitely well received by the market, as of course, exceptional drill results tend to be.
Yeah. What's interesting here is that there's similarities at this location of the LP fault that major miner Kirkland Lake has been finding at Detour. I wonder if you can kind of expand on this.
Yeah, of interest, actually, the Detour Lake deposit used to be run by our chairman, Mike Kenyon. He ran that deposit for quite a while. And, the interesting thing is actually the northwest area of the Detour Lake deposit, which is similar to results that we put out on Tuesday of this week, which tends to be the broader halos, these big disseminated intervals of gram per ton kind of material. Sometimes we'll see 120 grams per ton. Often it's 70 or 80, 50 meters, 40 meters of gram and a half, sometimes 2 gram material. And with the core of that, you do get high grade gold. We put out some of it on Tuesday. I think we had 25 grams over 4 meters. So really substantial high grade hit. But the system as a whole is dominated by these wider bulk tonnage type intervals. And that's like this remember, the LP fault for us is a multi-kilometer zone. We're drilling off a grid now that's almost 5 kilometers long. And the northern kind of kilometer, the northwestern kilometer, is more like those Detour Lake results. It's amazing. I was reading a report from Kirkland Lake just a couple days ago, and it was drill results from the Detour deposit. And it really, they're indistinguishable from the northwest LP fault zone, whereas the central LP fault zone that we have is it's definitely wider intervals of higher grade mineralization. So it's a more high grade dominated system.
Yeah, I loved it in the press release this morning. You wrote in big bold letters, "We encountered new high grade gold mineralization in addition to the expected bulk tonnage intervals." I mean, this is one of those projects when you find new gold that you didn't think was already there. That's important because it just adds more ounces to whatever this mineral resource estimate is going to be here in the making. So this is really important news. Did this section have any historical drilling, or I mean, not historical, but any previous drilling that you were following up on, or is this more of pure exploration type of work?
It's funny, this is actually where we found the LP fault zone. We didn't find the LP fault in its middle, where it's its fattest and highest grade. We found it right off towards the northwest tip. And that's where, but the first drilling that we did, like right from surface, and there was no surface drilling in this last news release. It was all deeper stuff. But right from surface where we were drilling around here, I think the first drill hole was, I think it was 2 meters of 200 grams. And then it went through, I think, 12 12 grams over 14 meters. And then it went through, if I believe it was about 50 meters of about 3/4 of a gram. And that's diagnostic. I mean, that showed us the way things were going to go with the LP fault in the future, that there would be these central high grade areas and these wide sort of bulk tonnage intervals around them. And that's been a pattern we see again and again and again over many kilometers. But that was one hell of a discovery hole, to be able to hit all those mineralized intervals right from surface, right in the first hole. I think that's when we knew we were on to an absolute monster of a gold discovery.
So how much follow up based on these results you published today? How much follow up is demanded here at this specific spot?
Well, you've in just that area, like you have a kilometer long area, which is going to require now, some of the drill spacing. It's always the decision that you have to make as a company here is really what's the required distance between drill holes. And, if you have only a bulk tonnage type, kind of system that you're working on, you can space those drill holes sometimes 100 meters apart. It's like drilling a big copper porphyry or something. But when you begin to see that you have the high grade endowment as well, we're going to have to do some denser drilling here. And again, totally within the current drill budget. It's just kind of exciting that we're going to get, we believe, additional high grade gold endowment in this area that people weren't necessarily expecting.
Yeah. And this will be added to the mineral resource, no problem?
Yeah, when that comes out, I would anticipate, probably around this time next year, or sometime around then, end of current year, beginning of next year. Yeah, you're going to have that's going to report to that resource as well, just like everything else.
I kind of wanted to turn the attention here and talk about drilling technique, because you had mentioned it in these news releases about the use of directional drilling. And we've kind of had different conversations in the past about directional drilling. A few companies are using it. One company in actually South Dakota was planning on using it at one point. I haven't really heard much from that project for a while. But talk to us about what directional drilling is and why it is applicable here to the Dixie project.
Yeah, we have some of the zones that we're dealing with, like the Dixie Limb zone and the Hinge zone. These are Red Lake style high grade golden veins. So, unlike the big high grade panels at the LP fault, these are typical Red Lake style high grade golden veins. And these things are going to go down. I mean, everything on our project looks like it's going to go down potentially for kilometers. Like everything else in the district does. But the problem is when you have to do deep drilling and you want to do precise drilling, doing an entire new drill hole that's a kilometer long from surface is time consuming and costly. So one of the things companies like ours do is you do a pilot hole across the deposits that you want to hit. And then you can go down with a follow-up hole and use a wedging type system, which basically changes the direction that the hole is drilling at a certain point. And you can do effectively, if you can imagine a cone of holes that are aimed around that central area, and you can hit a number of targets and follow these high grade zones down plunge, down dip, and basically delineate resource that way. But that way you're only re-drilling, half of the hole each time, or a third, or whatever the case is. So you save a lot of meters drilled, which saves a lot of cost, and it's a lot faster because you're not having to drill down through, say, the first 500 meters of rock or something to get to these deeper targets. So directional drilling can be a real cost saver and a real time saver when you're doing resource definition type drilling from surface on these sort of vein type systems. And that's what we plan to do with our satellite zones, the Hinge zone and Dixie Limb.
And how far spaced are those pilot holes? Because I think you were doing every, 50 meters before?
Yeah, on the LP fault, I think our average drill spacing in some areas is about 45 meters right now.
Okay.
But on the Dixie Limb and the Hinge zone, these vein style zones, they have to be drilled every 20 meters or so. So you only want to do a pilot hole every 100 meters if you can, and then the intervening holes you're going to use the wedges that you can basically have shorter holes branching like branches off a tree off the pilot holes, and that's going to save a lot of drilled meters.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of time, obviously.
Oh,
it's not like you can just go right through that thing, easy peasy.
Yeah.
It obviously takes time. Tell me why, when did the idea of directional drilling kind of come to you, and really what was the big selling point for you to say, like, let's go ahead and do this?
Yeah, it's been done in this area before. There was a company called Gold Eagle. This is like more than 10 years ago, who was drilling off a deposit between two of the existing mining infrastructure points in the district. And that was quite deep. That was 800 meters vertically down. And they ended up using directional drilling to complete some of that drilling as well. In our case, our zones actually go right to surface. So we haven't had to do this for the first 400, 500, 600, even the first test holes down to 800 meters depth. But we're drilling some of the targets we have, they're continuous panels. It's a little bit funny, but the geologists on site call them the plywood sheets. So this Dixie Limb zone, they call it the plywood sheet because the geology is completely vertical, and the gold occurs at a contact, a planar contact. So it's like a big plywood sheet between these two rock types. So you never miss it. In the 100 or so holes that we've had going through that area so far. So the idea is just to fill that in on a grid. So it's a very amenable type target. It's very predictable, and we should be able to wedge drill a systematic grid onto it using this methodology.
So is the directional drilling currently taking place as we speak?
It's going to be beginning shortly. We've
Okay.
got the pilot holes in place. There's a few other deep holes that we want to do with standard drilling first, and then that drilling is going to be it'll be underway, I imagine, by this summer.
And what are the challenges with reporting assays from those from different directional drillings, depending on which direction those holes went through from the pilot?
We'll actually just keep providing cross sections and
Okay.
long sections so you see exactly where they are. Otherwise, it's standard reporting exactly like everything else
Oh,
from this interval to that interval in each hole. It should be very much like what you've seen already.
okay, very good. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you some recent big news out of the Red Lake district. That was in announcement of acquisition of Evolution Mining acquiring Battle North. Obviously, this is good news for the district here. Give us your thoughts here, Chris, on this acquisition and M&A in general.
Well, the M&A landscape is going to be very active this year in Canada, especially, but other tier one jurisdictions. Mainly, like there's a move from the board of direction level, directional and strategic level within many of the larger mining companies to get away from unsafe jurisdictions. They're looking for long-term, stable return on capital investments. So these are the kind of jurisdictions. Like Red Lake is a prime example. You know, there's been 30 mines in the area over its lifetime. It's still a major site of high grade mining, and you've got a system of laws and government in place that are stable for long term production. So, Evolution announced that they were going to take some of their capital a couple of years ago and move into the Red Lake area. They acquired the main mine from Newmont, the Red Lake Gold Mine, and they're looking to form sort of a commanding presence in this area because there's really good road access, there's power. And there's a permitting landscape that allows expansion. So, if you're going to go out of Australia, which is a very good mining jurisdiction, into anywhere else, you're going to want to go somewhere stable like Canada. So part of the plan that Evolution has is that they've defined a number of new gold resources at the Red Lake Gold Mine. They're a bit lower grade than some of the past mining. So historically, Red Lake would have mined an average of about 15 grams per ton, and that's gone down to about 10 grams per ton over time as ore reserves have been depleted. There's companies going into production now off of an average of about 10 grams per ton to 7 grams per ton. And the new zones that Evolution has found are in that 6 or 7 gram per ton range, and they need to build new facilities or update the mill facilities that they currently have, which are designed generally for higher grade material. So part of their production plan, I believe, is to do those upgrades. And I think the acquisition you're looking at of Battle North's project, Bateman, was basically so that they could plug a hole in that sort of planning and production profile by using the mill that's sitting there.
Mhm.
Plus, from an exploration point of view, there was some very nice exploration ground as well, sitting in the Battle North property. So you end up with being able to patch your production expected production profile. You get access to the mill, and you get access to the regional exploration. There's also some tax credit advantages. So I think, but all in all, I think it's a move for Evolution to show that they want to have a commanding and meaningful lead in controlling the Red Lake area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good news. I mean, M&A is obviously heating up. Do you think it took maybe I don't know, I call it kind of a lesser case of COVID and things opening up, and maybe this gold price potentially of finding a bottom to really spur some big announcements like this?
I think it's just it's primarily a matter, I think, at this point of having a lot of cash
Mm.
being generated by these companies, and of course, you're mining an asset that's not easily replaceable. So, if you're thinking about what you want to see as a company, really the holy grail in the mining industry is big, long-term positive cash flow projects in stable jurisdictions. And this is one of the reasons Great Bear has been a market leader, is because that's what the analyst and evaluative community, the banking community, thinks we have. Do we think we've got one of these kind of tier one type assets? And these things are rare. There's only 30 in the world. So that's talking about our general case and showing why, what when you can find something like that, why it can be so valuable. But from the M&A general perspective, you got to look at these companies as just sitting on a lot of money, needing to replenish their reserves, and unless you want to try to do complicated merger deals among equals, which, as we could see with the Barrick and Newmont discussions a couple of years ago, do not often end well.
Yeah.
You're going to be looking at these types of assets. So I think you're going to see a number of these kind of dominoes fall over the year. It starts with the smaller deals like GT Gold, like Battle North, and it ends up culminating in these sort of multi-billion-dollar deals as companies tend to, their boards have the fear of missing out, that they're not going to be able to capture these sort of important long-term reserves before their competitors get them.
Well, that's an interesting spot for you. I mean, because you mentioned that you think, Dixie's a top tier one type of project with all those classifications you just point out. I mean, I was laughing in the back of my head. Well, I'd love to see the counter argument. A reason why it wouldn't be. I mean, and I'd probably be chuckling just like that. But
Yeah.
it puts you in almost a precarious position because you do have that type of project. It seems like obviously there's a big technical report and work you're doing to get to that report later this year. But I would be shocked if there weren't companies that had kind of the FOMO just on Dixie itself, right? I mean, but it puts you in a spot because you have responsibilities for your board and to your shareholders. I'm just, but it's just kind of, it's interesting. Like, well, when do you open the door? When do when do you open the door and let it go?
Well, for us, Trevor, this is really a case of heads down and mind your own business. And our business here is developing a very exceptional gold project right off the side of the highway in Red Lake. And we're bringing in the people. You could see with the addition of Mike Kenyon to the board last year, Paula Rogers to the board last year, and now Gil Lawson with the mining engineering background and the operational expertise in Ontario and Red Lake. I mean, we're going to bring all the people in and complete all the studies and do all the work to get this thing built. And to, you got to say, if you're sitting on an asset which you think is better than any other comparable asset at this stage in the planet, that's what I think. The reports are going to have to prove it. The results of the economic studies will have to prove it. But it looks exceptional. I've worked in a lot of mining projects, and this is by far, by orders of magnitude, the best one that I have seen. So, if we think about it from that standpoint, why would you be eager to give it up? You're definitely going to want to try to benefit your shareholders as much as possible. And for us, that's getting this thing all the way down the line. And that's what we're focused on. If somebody at some point tries to throw unspeakably large bags of money at you, that's something the board has to consider. But between now and that point, there's a major asset to develop, and that's really our business.
All right, Chris. Well, you're an excellent CEO because you remain politically correct with some of those questions that I continue to ask you, and I respect.
I do my best.
I know, and I respect you for it, my friend. I respect you for it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much for your time. Keep up the good work. I look forward to catching up with you probably first part of next month. Until then, stay safe and be well.
Thank you, Trevor. Talk soon.
Yes. Chris Taylor from Great Bear Resources. They trade on the TSX Venture with GBR and also on the OTCQX with GTBAF. That wraps things up for us today. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the news briefing. Be well. The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decision.